Another great thing about your Revolution XP is that you can use it for what some people call functional training. But keep in mind, in reality, any exercise performed properly can add strength and improve function. All you need to do is remove the seat and take away the back support. Then perform the advanced workout exercises on this DVD while standing up or while sitting on a stability ball or even a workout bench. For example, by doing the exercises while sitting on the ball, you're able to work on your balance and your core stability at the same time, but you'll have to sacrifice some resistance. If you want to work with more resistance, using the bench gives you a solid platform to work with. Both the ball and the bench are optional accessories available from BOWFLEX. I want to show you a crunch on this optional stability ball. And there's a couple little things that if you'll pay close attention in the beginning as part of the setup, it really will make it easier when you get into position. Here's the first one. If you'll put the ball, and you'll have to experiment with this a little bit, but if you'll put the ball kind of on the plate down here, the base plate, because what you're going to do is walk out on the ball in a few minutes. And that will end up having the ball roll forward into position. So that's why I said you need to experiment to see how far you travel on this thing. Another thing, I've got to tell you, practice a crunch. Become proficient at a crunch on the ball before you try to add any resistance from a revolution. Because we're making an already advanced exercise even more advanced by adding the resistance from the ropes and the BOWFLEX. Okay, so you've got to be good at controlling the ball before you even attempt this. Otherwise, you may get yourself in trouble. So be cautious, all right? Now, the next thing for preparation, notice how Krista has used her left arm to grab the right handle and vice versa over here. But doing that in the beginning, even though it's a little bit weird reaching for them, crossing them over, all this kind of stuff, you'll do that now. It'll make the actual exercise a heck of a lot easier. So watch how this works. As she walks forward, she's going to allow those handles to come up near her shoulders. And because she already did the crossing of the handles, she can just cross her arms right across her chest. That was easy because she had already done the work before, and she's already good at controlling a crunch on top of the stability ball. So now she's got added resistance. So she's making, as I said before, an advanced exercise even tougher because she's going to have to work even harder right here in the abdominals. Now notice she's just doing a crunch. She's not trying to sit up all the way. She's just performing the crunch, which is ribs towards the pelvis. So watch as she tightens. You can even see the muscle shaking here a little bit, which is exactly what you want. So many times you see people doing exercises, and it's almost as if they try to get out of the work that they're trying to do. The whole purpose of an exercise is to challenge your body's ability to do something, to do a motion. And if you try to do something like move fast to make it simple, well, you're kind of wasting your time. So let's keep our exercises challenging, okay? And that means control. That's what that means. She's not moving her pelvis much. A lot of times people will do a reverse crunch while they're doing the regular crunch. There's really no reason to do that right here because this is the resisted portion up here. She's got plenty of motion. So another factor is how far you go into extension. And that is also going to be determined by the size of the ball, the amount of inflation that's in it. This one's pretty soft and it's a pretty big size stability ball. But if you had a smaller one that was very firm, she would be able to really wrap around that. For some of you, that may be uncomfortable. You've got to show enough control to only go into the extension that's comfortable for you. But we definitely, that's the advantage of the ball also, is going into some extension, as opposed to just laying on the floor where you're relegated to a flat surface. So this is a great opportunity to do that. But as I mentioned before, the whole thing is advanced. The only other thing I've got to remind everybody, abdominal exercises are for strengthening. Strength is not only for improving muscle, but improving muscle control. This is not a spot reducing exercise. You will never do an abdominal exercise for the purpose of getting rid of the fat that resides around your waist and over the top of your abdominals. Okay? So you've got to eat right, you've got to burn some calories, but this is a great, great, great strengthening exercise. For a seated row, you could use the optional bench, which is what we're going to take a look at. You could be seated on a ball if you were to purchase one of those, a stability ball. You could even do it seated on the floor. And of course, there's always a standing version. But take a look at this, because the Freedom Arms and their settings are going to change things just a little bit. We've got these set. I didn't put them all the way down, because when they're all the way down, they get very narrow, and I think it's going to get close to the proximity of her knees and her legs and the bench. So I put them out a little bit wider on position number 8. Okay? Now, because the pulleys are still very low on position number 8, they're pulling her downward a little bit. So I'm going to have her whole torso leaning forward just a little bit so she's just about perpendicular, right? Perpendicular to the ropes with her torso. And then the motion is going to be the scapular pinching or retraction, pulling these together as she brings her arms back. And a lot of times people have trouble performing the scapular part of it. They'll have a tendency just to do the arms and not move the shoulder blades. Like that. So what you might need to do is practice keeping your arms straight for a second and just retract. You might need to learn that and get a little stronger at that so that you can then incorporate it as one fluid motion into the row. And the thing you want to watch also is that you don't use a bunch of elbow flexors and bend like this. Just keep this forearm virtually in line with the rope. So we're going to see one more good one, and then we're going to make an adjustment, a little change. Notice she's kept her posture the whole time. She hasn't done this big reaching forward thing where she loses her posture. Yeah, and then she's not rowing a boat. She doesn't need to lean back. That actually takes away from this particular exercise. So the other thing we could do, I probably wouldn't move the freedom arms to the halfway point because that's going to make them so wide, make the pulley so wide that there's not going to be much motion left to perform. But we could go ahead and move up to about position number 1. If I can do that from over here. There we go. Now again, we're a little bit wider than shoulder width with the pulleys, but because of the new angle, I'm going to have her actually lean back a little bit. So she is once again perpendicular to the ropes. Now there are two great variations. One is not necessarily any better than the other. It's always nice to have great options. This one is a little bit different though, in that having this high version of a row, you actually get a little more potential range of motion in the shoulder. If she does stay more up straight and doesn't lean back, then she's coming from a much greater range or starting position. But otherwise, the exact technique or procedure that she's going to perform, exactly the same. Some people call this exercise a wood chop, and it's because of the rotating nature of it. It's really a head-to-toe exercise. Virtually everything's going to be working. And the big thing is standing position, resistance starting from head height or even a little above. So notice we got the freedom arm over here up to level 1 or position number 1. You could even go up to 0, which would bring it a little higher and a little closer in. This is probably a good place to start. I've got the grip handle adjusted for Josh to the furthest or the longest setting, the longest D-ring away from the handle. And we're going to show you how what difference that can make in a minute. And some decisions you can make on how to set that up. But the big thing is, notice Josh's feet are split apart. His front leg is facing, his front foot is facing a little more forward here. That's something else you can also manipulate a little bit. His back foot facing to the side. And right now, we're going to start with a relatively small motion. It's not going to be much arm motion, it's going to be a bunch of trunk motion. And I want you to see what that looks like when you try it. Do it with precision, see what it feels like to move mostly in the trunk. Then we're going to slowly add in some hip motion with that. So notice his pelvis and everything is moving, and you can kind of think of the sequence, like he starts with his trunk almost and then brings in his pelvis. If you're really precise, you can change that. You could start with the pelvis and then bring in the trunk. Did you see how he did that? Watch closely one more time. Start with the pelvis and then bring in the trunk. So it's almost like the sequence of the little chain of events. You can manipulate that. And I'm not going to tell you one's necessarily better than the other. I think it's something that you should change and manipulate from workout to workout. So next I'm going to have Josh start to bring in a little more leg. So you're going to see motion even down here, maybe even his foot spinning on the ball of his foot. As he comes back, notice how he's spinning a little bit. So he's got some options there. Now when I was mentioning the handle adjustment before,